Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are joined today, finally, after 6 months of recruiting,
Wow.
by Anthony Thomas, University High School in San Francisco. Coach, thanks for being here.
Oh man, Justin, I appreciate it. I'm the one that should be honored. I'm being interviewed by the California State Athletic Director of the Year. I should be interviewing you.
We'll flip it around after we're done.
Right on, right on.
All right, so Coach, can you take us through the journey? How did you end up at University High School? What were the steps along the way, the twists, the turns, the pivots, all the
Woo.
way back to you getting your first start in athletics?
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. I started this journey as a history teacher back in the day. I taught U.S. history and World Civ at New Roads High School in Santa Monica. Um, it was a pretty new school. We didn't have everything. And you get into a new private school, you're not only doing, your teaching, but you might have to do admissions, you might have to do annual fund. There's a lot of different roles that you play in a new private school. It was basically an offshoot of Crossroads that most people know. Um, but yeah, I started there. My head of school one day came in and said, I just fired the athletic director. I need you to do it. And I was like, and at the time I was just coaching baseball and teaching, which is all I wanted to do. And I said, absolutely not. That dude was running around with his head cut off all the time. I don't want that job. And he's like, you're the best man for the job. I need you to do it. What is it going to take? And I said, well, let me think about it for a minute. I'll get back to you tomorrow. So I went home and just kind of did my studying at CIF webpage, tried to learn some things there. Were there any professional organizations? So I found CASADA, I found NIAAA, and I said, all right, here's the deal. So I went back to her, I said, well, here's the deal. I'll do it, but you're gonna have to send me to the annual conference at NIAAA. You're going to allow me to go to the CASADA conference every year. I said, every year I'm going to have to do those two conferences because I need to get up to speed. He was like, he agreed to it all. And I said, fine. So I did it. So we started an athletic program in New Roads. I did that for a couple of years. And, a friend of mine called me and said, hey, you were once up here in the Bay Area. There's this little school that's looking for an AD. And I'm like, I'm pretty good. I'm already at a little school. I mean, what's so special about this one? He's like, well, it's called the Urban School, and they really want to compete and get better. And they're in a league with like University and Lick Wilmerding, and they want to compete. And I just thought of you because I know, you're competitive. We know what you can build. So I said, well, if you think it's worthwhile, I'll take a look at it. And and so I got an interview, and literally Justin, I came up for the interview and literally drove by Urban probably 3 times and ended up having to stop and call and go, where is this school? Because it's in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco, and it just looks like a normal row house, and then you get inside and it's like a big blown up treehouse on the inside. It's amazing. But then, I was like, well, where are the fields? Like, where's everything? But, their head of school at the time, he was really great. His name was Mark Salkin. And he was like, this is what we want to do. We're really interested in you. So I took it on. I thought, hey, I would love to just be a full-time AD. That sounds like a fun job. I learned a little bit about it. I missed the teaching part, but I took it on as a new challenge and got into it and worked that school into a little bit of a lather. And we started to get good in certain sports. We got good in volleyball, we got good in baseball. I was coaching the baseball team. And we got good in basketball, and we just started there. And that led me to get an opportunity at Sacred Heart Prep, which is a school I know and that's a great place. My feeling then was like, if I'm really going to make athletic directing a career, I kind of need to have experience with football, and I kind of need to have experience with aquatics. They had both, and they were good, and so that was really a good opportunity there. Didn't hurt that it was a 64-acre campus and had all the facilities, and they were pretty competitive. So I had a good run there. A lot of things happened in my life that changed things. I'm a big family guy. My mom got sick. There's some other things that happened that made me move back to Southern California for a time. just to take care of her. But I did that for a little bit and went back to New Roads actually, and really was just teaching and being a dean of students at the time. And working for a while, my mom got better. I was missing the Bay, and the same guy that got that introduced me to urban called me back and says, "Hey, I got this another school that's really interested in you. Um, would love for you to come up." And I'm like, "Well, what is it?" And they're like, "Well, it's the French American International School." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's different." So came up, interviewed for them, and really just said, "Hey, I'm willing to do this, but here's the things that I need to make this work." And they were great for that time there. And just I just coached and just kind of honed in my craft a little bit. And so then, after 2 years, kind of what I felt was like my dream job came up. The Branson School came calling, looking for someone. I had a friend who was the admissions director at the time. And you always have to have a relationship with your admissions director if you're an AD at private schools. So, I interviewed with them, got that job, and just really kind of took off from there. We were really good in a number of programs for being such a small school at Branson. But we went to 6 straight state championships in volleyball.
And you were good at basketball. Don't
We were
forget.
very good in basketball. When probably still the winningest school in North Coast section in terms of basketball championships is Branson in terms of girls and boys. So we ran a really good program there, and it worked out really nice. Uh, just to make a long story short, I lost my parents in the last 5 years. Both of them passed away. And I had to move back, down south to sort of deal with some family stuff, and was just able to get a job at Francis Parker, which was really cool and a great experience. I've always wanted to live in San Diego. It's a great town. And so I spent 5 years at Francis Parker, knowing that eventually I'd probably come back to the Bay Area, but also knowing that these jobs are really hard to find and hard to get. Um, so I was really happy at San Diego and down in San Diego at Francis Parker, and I wasn't sure I was ever going to leave. And my one of my closest friends, who's the admissions director here at university, he called me and says, "It finally happened. There's this opportunity here at university, and I want you to apply for it." And I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of happy in San Diego. I mean, I wear shorts to work every day. It's like it's pretty comfortable down here." And he was like, and I happen to be godfather to his daughter. And he's like, you haven't been a really good godfather, and she's going to be a freshman at the school, and you need to bring your blankety blank up here and take on your duties. Uh, that was pretty compelling. And so, I got, and I've known university for a long time, competed with them. They are a program that, I tried to build my programs after a lot, especially at Urban, and then competed really hard with at Branson, to be, on that top level of a program for independent schools. And so I knew all about it. So, and I'm one of those crazy people like, do you want to follow the guy to follow the guy? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be that guy. I don't have a fear in that. I'm a competitive guy. And so here we are. I'm here. I got my goddaughter walking around. She sneaks in, wants to talk to me about her dad. And I'm like, be careful what you say. But but I love her to death. And she's playing basketball for us. And we've had just an amazing first year. And I will say, listen, we just did our coaches appreciation dinner last night, and I got a great group of coaches. So there wasn't much that I did in terms of taking over the reins. I added a few aspects to it as I kind of wanted to watch and learn. But you know, my job is to provide the resources and support for our coaches and kids to be successful. And they were this year. We had a tremendous run across the board. It started in the fall when our girls tennis team won NCS. Our volleyball team made it all the way to the NorCal semifinals. We had a field hockey team play for the league championship. We did a lot of good things there. We had a cross country team. Both teams finished third in the state. in cross country. So we got off to a fast start. And then the winter came, and let me just say, I just never been to a school, and they had done this last year where all four teams, the varsity soccer boys and girls and varsity basketball boys and girls, all played for a section championship in one day. Uh, so I was like, okay, well, that's 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 the precipice right there. I'm not having to worry about. I'm not trying to do that again. And what did they go out and do? They did it again. All four teams played. Two of the four won the championship. Boys basketball and girls soccer. We were runner-ups in the other two, and then our girls soccer team just went on and won a NorCal championship. They finished third in the state, number one in NCS, 12th in the country. I mean, it's like that doesn't happen to schools like ours. But they were just so talented, these girls, and it was led by Bay Area Soccer Player of the Year, Bella Ong. She's off to UC Santa Barbara to play soccer. So we're just very proud of that. So, to have that run in the winter, and I'm just like, man, it's like, I got tired of hosting. It was just like, hey, I mean, this is great, but man, these guys got to host all the time. It gets hard, and so we got into that. And of course, winter bleeds into the spring. And so all of a sudden we got all these other, 11 new sports starting, but the four sports still going on. So at one point we were doing 15 sports at one time. It reminded me of COVID back when we didn't start until the spring and down in San Diego. And then in San Diego, we said, hey, we're going to let all the sports play in the spring. And so we were doing football and everything all in the spring during COVID. I was like, man, we are nuts. So the amount of mental and physical gymnastics it takes to put all this on, especially here in the city where we don't always have the facilities. We're blessed to have, the facilities that we have. But even then, we still had to go out and get more facilities because we had 15 teams competing at one time. So that's
Yeah,
how I
that's
got
awesome.
it. So I'm in my first year. Really, really excited. I did a lot of other things with my organization, NOMAD, National Organization of Minority Athletic Directors. I did a presentation down at the California State Athletic Directors Association meeting last month. Spoke at the national conference as well. So just really been busy trying to, be a mentor, support other ADs, and do all those things to really uplift this profession because it is a profession that I love. We make great impact on kids, and and I want to ensure that everyone recognizes how important this role is in schools.
Yeah, that is a
Long-winded, I know. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's perfect because it's a great setup. And you've listened to this, and ultimately I generally try to stay in flow with whatever's going on, but there's so many things that you just mentioned that this conversation may seem a little disjointed to the listeners because I'm going to go back to some very specific things that may require me to not stay in flow, and I'm sorry for that. But I want to talk initially about um, job pursuit. And it sounds like you didn't do a ton of that. Opportunities presented themselves. But what I'm really after, and I've talked about this with some newer people to the profession in coaching and in administration, about every job's not a great job.
Yeah.
In regards to being a mission appropriate fit for us as individuals, being about time and place at that institution, whatever it might be. Can you shed some knowledge and some thoughts and wisdom just on the idea of climbing the proverbial ladder, taking jobs versus passing on jobs, just things that you considered on your journey, and
Mhm.
maybe some things that you gleaned and learned that you can share with others?
Yeah, yeah. I think and I've always said this, and I've had to, answer some questions even in interviews. My career has been circumstantial in a lot of ways. Things have happened in my life, in my family that, some people might not make the same decision I made. I made a decision like when my mom got sick, I was out. There was no, and at the time, and I think back about it, Sacred Heart Prep was really a good job. It's really a good job. I mean, facilities, everything that it has to offer. and there were great people down there. There's Lamont Quattlebaum. There's some folks down there that are still my friends. Don Him, who's one of the ADs down there for the girls side. She was my assistant at the time. We're still good friends. You know, Tony, the basketball coach, was another guy that we kind of brought in, and we're all really close. But those are things, circumstantial things happen in people's lives, and you have to, consider those things and make decisions. But here's been my secret. Like I don't think I've ever burned a bridge, right? Like I work really hard. People know, I'm not getting offered these jobs if I've just gone in and just destroyed places. I've gone in and tried to make places better than I found it, and I think I've done that most of my career. And I'm who I am. You know what you're getting from me. I'm very honest about it. And as I've gotten, deeper into my career, even at the university job, I was really interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me, because I was being very honest about what I was going to come and do. And like, you need to know this, or just say I'm not the right guy for you. And I'd have been fine. Like I said, I was flip-flopping it down in San Diego, so I didn't have to leave, but I did have, family ties and things that drove me to that. But I'd say throughout my career, one thing that I've done that I've always suggested to other young ADs, and I'm mentoring them, is that I've interviewed a lot. And I've interviewed not to really leave. I've interviewed just to find out, what are schools looking for in ADs these days? Because our jobs change. I mean, when we go to, I think the one constant session that I always go to when I go to conferences is the legal one. Because I'm every year I'm like, man, we are going to get sued for this, this, and this. We're liable for everything as ADs. And so those are all those things that, I'm always like, what are schools looking for? Because that tells me exactly, whether I can fit in these schools or not, because I'm someone, I'm very honest. I think people know this about me. I hate losing more than I love winning. I want to be competitive. And so, I try to, I have a vision. I come in with a vision. Here's what we're going to try to do over 3 years, over 5 years. This is what I'm looking to do. And, but and I work within those lines and guidelines that folks give me, but that's something you always want to find a place where belonging matters, right? Where I can be my authentic self. I think, there's times, look, I've traveled across country talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and, the pushback from, some areas of the country about that. The most important aspect of all of that is the belonging part, because the belonging part has nothing to do, you don't have to get into race. It's like, how are you treating people? Like, how are you treating people every day? Can I be my authentic self in your community? Right? When I first started working in independent schools, I was the only African American employee in one school. And I walked into my head of school's office one day and I said, listen, every time I walk into this school, I feel like a white bucket of paint falls on me. I am not comfortable here. I don't feel comfortable here when I walk into the copy room and everybody's talking and then they stop talking. Like, what is that about? We need to do something or I'm out of here, you know? And to his credit, and that was the great Jim Lander at San Francisco Day School at the time, he was like, no, let's do something about this. Let's talk about it. And it was one of the first times that the school brought in Peggy McIntosh, who at the time was an expert on this idea of white privilege, right? And like, what is white privilege? And it was just a conversation that I think we all needed to have, because I think people just have biases. I don't think people are necessarily just racist right off the bat. I think there's just biases, unconscious biases, and we just don't understand it and we don't notice it. And we just are doing our things and not recognizing, the unintentional impact that you might have on someone. So this whole idea of belonging and why I talk about it and why I travel across the country talking about it is really kind of like the golden rule, right? Treat others how you want to be treated. We don't have to get into the politics of that. It's just a real basic concept. And so, I give space to that in every program that I go to. I want my student athletes to feel like they belong. That's why we have a captain's council. We have an athletics council. I want our students to have a voice. Every meeting that I have with my staff here at university, I start the meeting with what weighs most on your mind right now. What that does is that allows them to share their truth and what's going on in their lives, because we got a lot going on in running our athletic department as it is. But there might be a day when someone's just not in the right frame of mind. We might be hosting a game that day. So if I know, hey, you're not in a good space, I'm not going to put you at the table and have you greet people because you're not in that mood today. And I understand that. So I want us all to be honest. And that's part of how you create that sense of belonging, because, hey, we all have bad days, and we gotta be able to do that. So I've always looked for schools that, and I've challenged schools, is this a place that you can do? And that's what you look for when you're at a job. That, doesn't matter. I don't care. I've turned down jobs where there's facilities galore, the money was great, but it just wasn't the right space. I just felt it in my heart, like I'm not going to be successful here because of things that I'm feeling. Um, and so I always have trusted my heart and my gut in my career. I'm in the 23rd, 24th year of this now. And I love it every day. And I'm in a good place. Like, I'm in a good place where I can go to my head of school right now and sit down and go, this is not right. I don't feel that. And he's like, I listen, I hear you. And it's one of those things where when you have a head of school or principal or just a boss in general who's going to hear you and acknowledge, that's golden. That's golden. If you run into people that are going to be defensive about something, like, listen, I'm just telling you who I am, what I'm feeling. I'm not asking you to save me per se, but I am saying that, we have a problem here and we need to address it. And so I think that's just really great when you have that type of a support system around you. And then when you can get involved in organizations, and even the one that I co-started with friends across the country, to be able to mentor and talk with people and just relate with what they're doing. NOMAD, was started right after the murder of George Floyd, and it simply came out of a question that I thought maybe most ADs would have in their mind, but it was like we saw all the unrest and everything that's going on in the country. Um, and our kids saw all the unrest and everything that was going on in the country. So when we get back from summer break and all of this unrest is going on, how are we going to talk to our kids? What are we going to say to our kids of color, all of our kids, to support them, to get them to understand where everybody's falling on this, and just trying to understand and that you can be comfortable where you are and in your skin. And unfortunately at the time there was no real way to connect with people with that lived experience to have that conversation. So we created NOMAD for that purpose, and for the purpose of, listen, whether we want to, admit this or not, the athletic directing profession at the high school level, and you might even reach to the college level, is a majority white male. Nothing wrong with that. It's just what it is. But can we provide opportunities for other people and women and everyone to have opportunities at this job? We have to, and I said this down in San Diego, I said, we have to try to get rid of the old boys network perception. It's not even a perception. It does exist. We're always lining up our guy as a succession plan. We're not doing enough to say, hey, this female coach right here should be a part of that succession plan. She's got it together. She should be the next AD. We don't do enough of that. And our kids need to see people that look like them in these roles. And so when those opportunities, because it's not about replacing anybody, I'm not advocating for that. I don't want anybody to lose their job. I'm just saying, when the job becomes available, can I challenge school districts? Can I challenge schools to not rush to judgment to find the replacement, but to really open up that search and allow for a diverse pool of candidates to just consider. If the person's not strong enough, so be it. But let's not just automatically do what we've done in the past, which has led to this over 70% of these ADs being of one demographic. Um, and it doesn't mean that those 70% are not serving kids and are not doing a great job, because most of them are. So I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, how do we go about making this an opportunity for everybody?
No doubt. And I don't think knowing the organization well and the people that lead it, that's not the conclusion I would draw either. It's very much like an empowerment, and how do we help people that, I mean, regardless of background, if you don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to get into space,
Yeah.
you have no chance, right? And so, from a mission and vision standpoint, when you organize Nomad, if you could give a quick, 5-second version of, look, here's who we are, this is what we do, this is where we can be found,
Right.
because we want to help uplift you on your journey, so
Mm-hmm.
that people can learn more if they want to do that. And
Right.
just before you do so, because I want to go back to what you talked about with belonging, it's organizationally, right? When you talk about what the mission was, versus how you include and welcome others, right? Because I am from that demographic, right? White male, 70%, whatever. But I'm at the conference and it's like, yo, come hang out, right?
Yep.
And it's like, I didn't feel like I belonged in the room in a way in which you felt, at your school, but I definitely was included, and the space was available for me to maybe get to where my own
Right.
baggage got out of the way, and I could feel like I'm belonging. Anyway, quick 5 second on what it is you do, where people can find you, because like CSADA or NIAAA, people don't know it exists. They can't take advantage of the resource.
Right, right. So, Nomad is an organization that we're trying to mentor new ADs. We're trying. It's a social organization. We do a lot of different professional development opportunities through webinars and things. We have our website, the nomadAssociation.com, is an organization that we go on there, we put our webinar stuff on there. We have a job board for people who are looking for jobs from time to time. We help them with that. We take it to the extent of not only letting them know of the job, but then meeting with some of us as members and saying, let's go through a practice interview. Let's talk about, let's review. We've partnered with an organization called NIMNet, which is the New England Minority Network, who places people. And so we get our members in front of them, they review their resumes and really coach them up to try to get these jobs. So we do those things. We do a lot of things where our members travel around the country and we talk about different issues. We've done that across the board. We now are something that we've really worked really hard to partner with NIAAA. I'm part of the NIAAA DEIB committee. And so we do a lot of education there. I would say prior to Nomad, the NIAAA wasn't offering a lot of DEIB type of workshops at their conference. And now it's really plentiful. You can find it. And then now we even have an LTI course on it. So it's really grown over the years. And I think, our you know our push to help with that, and partner with them was important in doing that. So we put on different events at the national conference to do that. We get on webinars, we talk, we provide professional development opportunities. That in the nutshell is what we do as an organization.
Perfect. And I'll put the socials in the
Yeah.
show notes so people can find you there as well. All right, I want to
Yep.
go back to something that you led with when we were talking about looking at jobs, right? And you come in, you're interviewing the school, you're going to be your authentic self, you're letting them know, like, look, here's who I am, here's how I'm going to roll. So, in that frame, right, in that lens, what are some of the things that you think are the best things you do in your programs that you've learned over the years, but yet then you've brought with you from stop to stop, right? As you landed year one, you're kind of doing an audit, like, what is this like? But
Right.
there's important and there's urgent, right? So, what are some of these things that are tried and true for the most part? Like, these are where you got to kind of push your chips in, regardless of location.
Yeah. It, I am very proud of the coaching symposiums that we do with our coaches because everything's about education now. Like when I was coaching 20 years ago, there there was a lot of less things I had to be mindful of back then than you do now. And especially you're working with kids and they're coming out of COVID. There's a lot of different things. So our coaches, like I said before, the amount of mental and physical gymnastics that a coach has to do to run their program is a lot. And so you got to train these people. You know, all of our schools are in this situation where the majority of our coaches are not on our campus. And so how do you go about making sure they feel a part of that campus, that they understand the culture of that campus? So you got to do training. So we do one, preseason of each season, a fall, winter, spring symposium where we talk about that. I mean, and it's an investment in time. It's an all day Saturday type of thing. I try to make it fun, but there's a lot of different things that we have to be mindful of. The mental health aspect of it, just some of your legal duties as a coach. We barely get into X's and O's. Like, before we talk about all these other things that we have to manage. How do we work with the school and the mentors at the school and the counselors at the schools when kids are having difficulties? So I really think that those are things that are like non-negotiables to me. When I talk about that, I always see people in the room shaking their head like, yes, that's yes. Can we please educate our coaches on what our school is and how it works? So that's always important. And then I remind the school like, hey, you know, part of this whole idea of belonging is that it might be helpful if we invite the coaches to the holiday party. Because somehow that gets left out because, oh, they're off campus. I'm like, yeah, but they spend 12 hours a week with the kids, more than the teachers do. So how about we create an environment where they feel a part of the community? So, we do those type of things that I think are really important. Most of my time, I've always had an opportunity or I have asked to meet with students when I interview. Um, because I want to hear, it's their program in a lot of ways. So I work for them in a lot of ways. And so I want to hear what their experience is. And there's been situations when I've done that where kids are like, no one's ever asked us how we felt about our program. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's not how I get down. We're going to have a council. You're going to meet with me once a month. My door is always open. So you start to build those relationships with kids and start to earn that trust, so that they, and we've gotten great insight from our kids when we get them in a room and they feel like they can be honest. We've got great things where we've changed our program because of their feedback. So it's important. So having a substantial evaluation process for our coaches that the kids have a voice in, giving them, voice in their program in general, those are things that are really powerful. You know, then we just do some of the fun stuff that kind of brings the community together, right? So whether it's like, look, the majority of our kids are not going off to college. So I want to give them that college experience. So, we announce all of our games. We have an announcer. We got music going on. We're getting hyped. We're trying to get our fan base going. Red Devil Nation just getting hyped in the crowd, getting pumped up about these different games. We want to provide that. We are so fortunate that we get to play our rivals, Lick Wilmerding, in the Chase Center every year in a basketball game. We shut down the school. We bus everybody over there to the Chase Center. We do those type of things. And those are the type of things I like to do. Like when I get people, I'm like, listen, we're going to raise the level of the program. So it's, social media days. This is all stuff that kids just love and you just have fun with it. So, those are the type of things that I try to bring to schools that when they hear it, they go, man, we didn't even think about, like, you're trying to do college stuff. And I'm like, exactly. We're trying to raise the level of our program. And I feel for some of my public school colleagues, they don't have the resources to do all of this all the time. Those are the real heroes when they're teaching 4 PE classes, but then they have 1,200 athletes that they got to get to wherever they got to go. That those are the real heroes. I'm fortunate that, like I said, I've taught in classrooms, but to be a full-time AD is a blessing. And so I'm going to make the most of being a full-time AD, and so I'm going to provide all of these opportunities for our kids. We're going to initiate global trips for our sports teams, right? We're taking the baseball team to the Dominican Republic next spring. We're going to do some other things like that as opportunities. And so it's just those type of ideas. And I think the one, that got a lot of people excited here at university is that, they used to do, sports nights after each season, and it was great. It was on campus, but, not everybody showed up, and it was just, the kids in that season that showed up. And I said, I said, and I actually last year came up to one after I was going to take the job just to see what it was like, and it was great for what it was. But I said, here's a bigger picture. I said, if you guys hire me, this is what I'm going to do, because I'm about bringing the community together, and this is an amazing community, and so I want to do an end of the year athletic awards night. So we're going to get into like the SB type. We're going to blow this thing up, right? And do this and invite people. So we're expecting 500-600 people to come. It's a end of the year awards. We're going to hand out our awards for our students, our department awards and everything. But it's just a celebration of our sport. But then it's bringing everybody together. And that's what athletics really can do, right? That's what is so great about athletics. Our world can be on fire, but if you say, hey, there's a football game on Sunday, the world's going to stop burning for a little bit because we're all sitting down and watching that football game. The world's going to stop burning when our basketball team takes the floor. We're going to get out there and start and root for the Red Devils for that one time and bring everybody together. And all of our differences are going to go away. But we got to break down those barriers. Athletics kills silos. It destroys silos. And so we have a duty within our schools to make sure that we're always trying to bring our community together. And I think that's what has excited a lot of the people that have hired me, is that's been my focus. I'm student-centered. I'm a servant leader, and I work within the framework that the school wants to give me. And there's some times where I try to color outside the lines. There's some times when I try to push the envelope, but they all understand he's just trying to do what's right by kids. That's like when we're in department meetings, and we're talking about in the athletic department, I go, we're debating back and forth. I go, remember, what is best for kids is what ultimately is going to determine this decision, you guys. And so that's just my approach. And so it's I guess it's been working. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been at some really great schools here in California. And I've always wanted to try to find a home. Like I said, a lot of things have been circumstantial. I've been at two schools where I've replaced an AD that's been here 20 plus years, right? And so people have always asked me in the interviews, like, someone asked it in a very creative way. They're like, you seem to be like a fireman. And I'm like, and how so? It's like, it seems like you just jump around from school to school and put out fires. And I go, that's not my intention, but that's how it's worked out. But you will also know that when you go back and you talk to those schools, and I'm never afraid to give references of former employers. I said, you will also know that there was a reason why I'm not there anymore. And it wasn't that to do with anything but my own decision, and I had to do it. And most times out of 10, I would be welcomed back if that situation happened. But again, these jobs don't open up very often. But when they do, and I had an opportunity, you know, I was able to come in and say what I say, do what I do, and convince the school to give me this opportunity. So I'm grateful for every experience I've had. It's made me the person that I am. And so I always lead with gratitude when it comes to that. I loved every school I've been at, every community that's impacted me. I have kids that I'm still in contact with from each school that I've been at.
So let's go back to what you just said. I've followed up two longtime athletic directors, and then you've probably also followed up some shorter tenured people as well.
Yeah.
What I would love for you to share is thoughts and advice on each of those situations, right? When you're
Right.
coming in after the long-term person who's, you know, somewhat of an establishment at the place, right? Versus coming in and there hasn't been as much consistency. I know
Right,
you're going to do you regardless, but what are the things that people need to be aware of in each of those opportunities?
right, right. First and foremost, have a vision for that situation. Have your vision. So when I don't think enough people when jobs are opening, and I'm mentoring someone right now who's applying for a job in Connecticut. Um, and I'm like, you got to understand every aspect of their league, who they are as a school, what conference they play in, what rules they go by. You got to understand all of that and then create your vision for how you're going to sustain or raise the level of that program within those confines. So you have to have a real understanding of that. So having a vision is most important, and you sharing that vision and getting people excited. But then the most important thing that we all can do, that we all need to do more of, is just shut up and listen, you know, just listen to people in their experience because, and that goes for both sides. What worked? What worked with the AD that's been here 20 years and has done some amazing things and run a successful program? What didn't work? And okay, let's address those things. And then the new someone hasn't been there that long. Well, what's consistently been going on that has made this person leave? What does the school really want out of their AD? And then create a vision around that. So it's just about listening. And so I always tell people and remind them, don't forget when you're interviewing, and I've said this before, that you need to be interviewing them too. You need to be asking, like a lot of these schools, that are like ours, Justin, they're going to give you a whole schedule of what who you're going to go see that day. I review that thing and go, well, where's the dean of students on this? I want to meet with them. Um, where are the parents on this? Or do you have a booster club? I want to meet with them because I want to see how batty they might be, or they're a group that we can work with. So sometimes a school will tell you who they are by who they put on the list of who they want you to meet. And so then you have to ask the question, is it all right if I meet with this person and see what they say? That's going to tell you a lot about who they are. So I always advise people to look at that and then make a request on who you want to meet with, because there's so many different people. I work with the dean of students at this school. I work with the mentors. I work with the dean of teaching. I'm like all over the place. Like I'm having one-on-one meetings with them, just touching base because we're all responsible for the student experience. And so if we're not communicating, if I just sat down here in this silo of mine and just worried only about athletics, there are going to be conflicts. Like you cannot operate as an individual entity in a school setting when there's other things going on. You got to know when AP classes are so that when the playoffs come, when to schedule your game. Be like, hey, we got to have a 5 o'clock start because they're going to be an AP class. You got to know all of those things. But if you're sitting here and you're not even paying attention to the school calendar because you're only looking at your athletic calendar, that's going to be a problem. And you got to be able to set those things up. So you got to have knowledge and a vision of how you're going to respond to those things. When I first get into a school, I try to meet as many people as possible. Parents come in, I have opening coffees. Hey, parents, come in. It's a coffee, it's a free for all. You can ask me anything you want. I always do that. I try to go in front of I always challenge my coaches because the one thing that we always sometimes we don't do, we don't realize we do is it's like, you know, have you ever stood in front of your team and actually asked them, you know, what are my weaknesses as a coach?
After you
It's
said that in Orlando, I went back and did it when I got home.
did
Awesome
you?
experience.
Isn't it? It's amazing, right? And so I'm glad you remembered that because that is something that, my coaches are like, really? And I'm like, yes. And then I practice it with them, right? I got in front of all of my coaches um this year and said, what is you've seen me, you've worked with me for a little bit. What is my greatest weakness as an athletic director? And I said, do not be afraid. And I said, I believe in awkward silence. Do not be afraid to tell me. because that is also another way of testing belonging. If your coaches are not willing to tell you where you're bad or where you do, then that's because they don't feel like they can say it because they're worried about their job. And no one should ever be worried about their job.
No doubt. I mean, it was funny. I left your session that you and Rick did, and I've known him for years, and it was like I came back, got to practice. Actually, I came back, started with my staff,
Yep.
got him in here, right? Your question, what's my greatest weakness as an AD? Got that information. And then went to practice and asked the kids, like, yo, what is, it was
Yeah.
like quiet. And then the one kid on my team that's close with my daughter was like, you do this and that. And then it freed up everybody else.
Yeah.
But it was great. It's a
It
great
is.
feedback cycle. And I think what you said earlier is often we don't get the information we need because people avoid conflict and don't want to provide the feedback that we're constantly looking for.
Exactly. That's exactly it. They'd rather our world is in our situation because we have all retreated to our silos and we just don't have conversations. And if we just have those conversations, that would be great, right? Emmanuel Acho, he did a great, he does his thing on, difficult conversations with a black man. But my favorite one is because it was so relevant to me is the one where he did it with the police officers in Petaluma. Well, I live 15 minutes away from Petaluma. Right. And so I go to Petaluma a lot. And so when he's talking to those police officers and he asks the simple question of when's the last time you've had a black person over for dinner? And this officer, to his credit, goes, I don't think I've ever had a person over for color, or someone over for dinner, or even a conversation with a black person. He's like, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a black person. And that just opened a light for me. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm thankful that you can admit that. But what makes me nervous about that is that then when I'm driving through Petaluma, because Petaluma is a little fun town, go to restaurants and bars up there. But if I get pulled over
I
by
got
you,
Mary's Pizza Shack.
yeah, if I get pulled over by you for whatever reason, and you might not have that life experience of why African Americans might feel uncomfortable when they get pulled over, then I can see where this whole interaction can go bad really fast. And we've witnessed that. So the fact that you don't have a conversation with a black person, never, that's like, get out of your silo, bro. You got to do that. I think it's just so important. Listen, I was in Vermont at the Vermont AD conference talking about these type of things. They were like, can you come and talk to us about how we can hire, recruit and retain people of color and women? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can talk about that. And in Vermont, it was about 150 ADs in a room in my session at least. There were two African Americans. Both were from Burlington and lived in Burlington, which is the big town, which you would expect. Okay, there's going to be some black folks, but overall in Vermont, we're not a big percentage down there. So I was just like, so you have me here to talk about this. So I was like, let's just be real about this, right? I said, you all are in your silos. You expect black people or people of color and women to come to you instead of you going out to them. I said, how many of you have actually been to a black barbershop? And they were like, and I looked at the two African Americans. I was like, is there a black barbershop in town? They were like, yeah, there's one. And I said, and on a weekend, how many folk? And they're like, oh, it's packed all the time. And I said, so why don't you guys, because you don't feel comfortable, right? Like you don't want to go there. Oh, and I'm like, I could have felt the same way about coming to Vermont and speaking, but I'm here. I got out of my silo. I'm here to learn as well as to grow as a person. But you all need to do that. You're telling me you want something, but then you don't want to go to them where they're at and see if you can find it. I said, listen, I made hires in San Diego by leaving my business card at a barbershop because what's down there? A lot of Marines and military people. And, people are like, are you willing to hire a Marine? I'm like, to coach some high school kids? Do you know what he just did? He just came back from Afghanistan. Yeah, I think he can handle some kids.
No doubt.
Um, so there's all those different type of things that you have to try to do. But, I'm going and talking to them about this. And I said, and I brought up NIMNET. And I said, how many of you guys know what that is? No one in the room. And I said, Vermont's part of New England, right? And they're like, yeah. I said, so would it surprise you if I told you that NIMNET stands for New England Minority Network? No one knew what it was. And then, like, sitting right in front of me was the Middlebury High School AD. And I have a lot of kids that I've sent to Middlebury College. It's a great little town. And I looked at him and I said, so you never heard of NIMNET? He's like, no. I said, would it surprise you to know that NIMNET was started at Middlebury College across the street from your high school? And he's like, no idea. So I said, if anything, if you don't learn anything else from this presentation today, other than getting out of your silos, just join NIMNET to start. Like, make those efforts. So I think that's what it's that's where that's where my passion lies now. Is I'm going to go talk in Arizona in September at their DEIB breakfast, and it's going to be about the belonging piece and getting out of our silos and working together, because we're trying to be the best for our kids, and our kids deserve that from us, and we need to model ways of communicating.
No, 100% right. And I think that's what we touched on 20 minutes ago is like, if you don't know these things exist, how are you expanding, right? How are you giving yourself an opportunity both as an individual and as an institution? And
Right.
so the more that that stuff gets spread around is super helpful. All right, we've been on for a while. I got one more, and then we're going to come back and do part two at some other point.
Yes, sir.
But you mentioned earlier, athletics kills silos. And while I agree, the other thing I would observe, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, is how it can also be perceived as creating them in regards to some of our faculty colleagues that maybe think athletics gets too much attention, right? And it's like, okay, well, they get to do all of this. This is always happening. We're not being taken seriously over here. How would you blend those two thoughts into articulating what you mean and how it can break down silos?
Right, right. There was a little bit of that at university. There was a clear canyon between athletics and academics, and a lot of that had to do because there wasn't communication. I probably have attended more faculty meetings than any other AD at the school. And I go and I listen. I probably, it's important to give them as much information as you give your parents, right? So we're like constantly pounding. Here's the early dismissal times. Why do we need early dismissals? Like, I give out an FAQ to the faculty. Like, this is why our kids need time to warm up. They need to do this. We have travel time. All these different things goes into our calculation. We're not willy-nilly when it comes to early dismissal times. We do a real exact calculation because our intent is to maximize classroom time. So I think ADs sometimes just need to go in front of faculty and say that, because if not, then you're allowing them to speculate. And they don't really realize, oh, wow, we didn't know that you took this much time. Absolutely. So that was one way. Then also, I extend olive branches to our faculty all the time in a lot of different ways. We do faculty appreciation games. So we ask our kids, write a letter to your favorite faculty member or staff member, and we're going to celebrate them at a game, right before the game. So it's like a senior night for faculty. And we get out, we celebrate them. I give them a gift certificate for swag, because you want to win the faculty over, give them some swag. They're they're happy as all door. They're like, woo, we got some new Nike gear. I'm like, exactly. That makes you happy. I'm good with that. But so we try to include them in that. We have guest coaches, who come in and faculty. One of the things I'm going to try to do next year is get our off-campus coaches to actually come to school for a day and shadow their student athletes, so that they have an understanding of what a day of the student looks like for them, and that they can meet the teachers. Sometimes teachers don't even get FaceTime with coaches. So is there a way that we bring them in to, the beginning of the school year meetings and say, hey, here are the coaches, meet with them in a social aspect, to do that. So there's all those different things where we start to drop the barrier that sometimes goes up between athletics and academics, and recognize that. But then I also challenge our faculty members as well, because I used to be a teacher. I said, listen, sometimes you have to see the whole child and the whole student. We work really hard in athletics to recognize the student part of the student athlete part. But sometimes, at least when we hear from our students, when we give them voice, they don't feel like our teacher doesn't care about sport. And I'm like, so I'm saying, if you want them to run through a wall like you see them running through the wall for their coach, then care about the whole child. So so instead of going, when they are leaving early for a game and you don't say anything to them like bye, maybe when they come back, you say, hey, how was your game last night? Or what's even better, hey, that play you made last night, that was amazing. And the kid will go, what, you were there? Like, yeah. Boom. That kid will have papers in on time because now, it's like that old saying, they don't know how much you care until, it's like, there, you showed them that you cared. So now they're going to care. It's really that simple. But sometimes you got to have those conversations with faculty members to discuss those things. And so I do. So I want them, and then sometimes it's just the language we use, right? So I use, well, my athletic faculty, right? I don't say coaches sometimes, I say athletic faculty, is really important. Sometimes I utilize our on-campus coaches that I have to do some of that bridging, and so we have some great allies that sit in faculty meetings, go, well, hey, no, I coach, I know what the athletic department's about, I know what they do. That's not true. So you have to have all those things. But so that's how I've kind of dealt with it over the years. Um, you know, yes, athletics is not the most important thing, but it is like the front porch of your house. It is the first thing you see. I didn't create the rules on why people want to write about athletics and not about our great theater program, or why they don't want to write about our great, chemistry program or whatever we do. We do it all well because we want excellence everywhere. But you cannot expect me to be mediocre and not get the attention because you're not getting any attention. Like, we're not going to teach to the median here. We're going to go always for the excellent. And so every program needs to be excellent. Period. Full stop.
No doubt. And that's a great stopping place because the next question that I'm going to ask is going to take us on another tangent for about 20 minutes, but we're going to do that on part two. So,
Awesome.
Coach, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. It's been a while, but I'm glad we finally got this done.
Yeah, brother. I appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.